Hello and welcome to the Multi-Gen Mini Masterclass. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we are diving into a deeply personal, the transformative side of multi-generational living. And that's what it's like to bring a parent into your home, and the lessons that you learn along the way, good and bad. And I'm really excited to do this conversation with my friend Ellen Frazier. Ellen and I met several years ago in a networking business group for women. We've since, become friends. We've worked together. We've traveled together. We've even launched her personal brand into the stratosphere. She is a dear friend and someone I admire so much for all that she's doing. So if I have to formally introduce Ellen, she is a powerhouse mortgage broker and real estate investor. But today she's here to talk primarily about her personal journey into multi-generational living. And Ellen and her husband welcomed her mom into their home after a diagnosis, creating a downstairs apartment while keeping the rest of the house running like clockwork. So it's a journey that's been full of all the things you would imagine, the ups, the downs, the laughter, the profound lessons. Ellen, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for taking out a time to dive into your story. Did I miss anything? Is there anything that you want to say before
Well,
we jump in?
thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor to be able to talk about this. And I never in a million years thought that our journey navigating this diagnosis would lead to an opportunity to be on your show, right? But it is a beautiful journey. And it is one that is so rewarding that I just can't wait to get into details and share with you.
I can't wait. All right, let's start at the beginning. When your mom was diagnosed with dementia, what made you and your husband decide to bring her into your home versus exploring other options? Was that an instant decision? How did you figure that out right out of the gate?
It was a gradual decision, obviously. I mean, we knew that there was something that had shifted or changed in her daily routine and activities. And we navigated the pandemic, obviously, with a lot of distance, which was challenging for everyone. And I feel like that time frame that we were trying to safely social distance that maybe something happened during that time frame that we were not aware of because she suffered a series of mini strokes, which led to us even navigating a diagnosis, right? And so we're doing that now. We're kind of navigating that journey, but she has been, dementia is actually a side effect. It's not really a disease that you're diagnosed with. So she's having or experiencing dementia symptoms. And so we had to step in. We probably stepped in a little over a year or so ago, just taking over her financial stuff and getting her organized in that way. So we started there and started noticing just little behaviors around the house. Like I'd come and visit and, notice that things were out of place or that she would have a hard time finding her phone or her keys. And so it kind of started off really small. And then, bills weren't getting paid. So we had to jump in there and things like that. So once we started navigating some of those daily tasks, it really just made sense to have her close by. Now, she lived close by. And when I say close by, I mean like, a mile or so down the
Okay.
road. But every time she lost her keys, every time she messed up the remote, I'd have to get in the car and drive over there. And I was like, wouldn't this be easier if I could just pop downstairs and fix the TV or whatever? So it kind of started off slowly. And what happened next is that we just started navigating. I don't know how deeply you want me to go into this, but we started navigating, do we find another house that's going to accommodate all of us, or do we try to make what we already have within the footprint of this home work? And so that was a whole process too, even navigating
Well,
those decisions.
that was going to be one of my next questions is once you made the decision and it's going to move forward, that is often a question for folks is, okay, let's look at what each of us has. Is there anything that is doable in what we have? Because, not everyone is ready to sell what they have and shop for something new, or not everyone has the ability to do that. So what for you when you gave thought to how the setup would need to be, what did you know going in were non-negotiables? Like we have to have X, Y, and Z.
Well, for us, I mean, definitely first floor living. I mean, it's become apparent that the stairs have become a challenge, right? And so we wanted to look at options with single story living. We also wanted to look at options that had either ADUs, apartments, mother-in-law suites, whatever on that first floor, because that was important. And I might mention that we're in coastal South Carolina, so many of the homes are elevated, so we had to navigate some of those challenges too. And so we had our list. We knew what we wanted. And actually, when we bought this house, it pretty much checked all of our boxes, right? So leaving this house meant that we would have had to have found another house that met all the demands and needs that we already had in this home and added on square footage and a separate living space so she could feel autonomous and have her own separate space, but also be safe and close by, right? That was the goal. We did find a couple of properties that might have worked, right? My husband's a real estate agent and I'm a mortgage broker, so it was like, okay, maybe this is the direction we need to go. He's looking at properties all the time, and so he found one on John's Island that I thought would be a good fit. When we looked at that property and we looked at the numbers, it actually made more sense for us just to stay still. And I know that might not be the case for everyone, but the house that we found, which would have been ideal, it was the exact same footprint of the house that we have today, except the mother-in-law suite was already added. And so that could have been a solution. However, we would have had to move further outside of the city limits,
Right.
which means more traffic and commute time in Charleston, which is already, pretty congested. And then also, when we ran the numbers, it just didn't make sense. We bought this house 10 years ago. We experienced a huge equity, shift
Yep.
increase during the pandemic. So we had the resources here and we're already, comfortable in our community. We're close to the hospital, we're close to pharmacies, grocery stores, doctor's appointments, all those things. And so, if we had made the decision to move out to Johns Island, although that house could have been a solution, we had to factor in the other resources from a time perspective. How long is it going to take us to get to a hospital if needed or doctor's appointments, right? And so, it just wasn't a reality for us to move further out into the country at this point. So we decided to build on and renovate here.
I think that's really exciting. The fact that you took the time to look at the numbers, to look at the logistics of things, I think is something that I talk a lot about when it comes to the planning process here, because it's so important to look at those things ahead and not just assume, oh, well, we're going to have to move, or, oh, we have to do this. Like actually put pen to paper and look about what kind of equity do we have in what we own? What kind of space do we have? Where could we maybe put a wall or put an add-on? All of those things, I think it's really important to think about in advance so that you can make educated decisions every step of the way. So when you were putting in your new level for your mom, what kinds of things? So you knew going in that you would have to have maybe a separate kitchen, a separate entrance, because your mom, it sounds, is still very independent, doing her own thing right now. So you knew you didn't want her to come live in a bedroom in your home. Like she needed her own space.
Well, actually, we did a kitchenette, so it's more like an efficiency. It's bigger than that. It's 1,000 square feet, but we did a kitchenette because I just didn't feel from a safety perspective that we
Gotcha.
needed to add a stove, right? So she has, microwave, air fryer, toaster, coffee, all the things that you would have in like an Airbnb setup, which is what we were thinking long term. Being that we are real estate investors, we had always had the vision of potentially turning that space into a separate rental property anyway. And so this just helped us solidify that decision and get the ball rolling sooner. And so we have it set up to where there are exterior doors with locks on them, keeping our space separate and secure from that space, but it's all one level. And the restroom was most important for me. having an accessible restroom, I think was like the biggest thing. And so installing that on the first floor, creating living space for her with a little kitchenette. And then also something that was equally important is that we have a pool in the back. And so we had flagstone that, walked out from the
Yep.
back flagstone to the pool area. And that is just uneven. And when we're talking about people that, maybe are having a difficulty picking up their feet when they walk
Sure.
and they shuffle their feet a little bit, you have to be mindful of that, like no area rugs, easy transitions between rooms and levels. And so when she walks out her sliding glass door to the pool, we installed decking to make everything absolutely one level over all of the flagstone. So it's I'm most excited about that just because,
Yeah.
from a trip hazard and safety perspective, I love the fact that she can walk right out and everything is on one level. She has one step down to the pool if she chooses to go to the pool. So it really made a lot of sense to make everything level throughout the transitions within our home. If that makes sense.
100%. And I think this goes back again to the planning from multiple perspectives. One, you mentioned that you're already thinking, you had already thought about a rental possibility. So having those thoughts in mind when you're building something, I think is really important. Because you do want to think about whether it's resale value, future use, that sort of thing, I think is great. And going ahead and planning for the safety stuff that inevitably comes with aging in general, whether your mom would have been fine with the flagstone for the next year or not. I find that we're doing some of that even in our home. We're putting in handrails where there haven't been, being proactive. My parents are fine and everything's great, but there's no need. My motto in life is it's better to be proactive than reactive. You don't want to wait for something to point out, oh my God, we should have done that. So,
Right. And I also have to say, we had a contractor that was just amazing. He loves my mom, and he really had her in mind every step of the way, even in framing. We installed additional framing so that we could install the rails around the
yep,
commode. We have separate, handrails in the shower, making the shower handicap accessible. It's, a roll-in shower versus like the tub shower combo. That's what she had. And that was scary. I mean, just thinking about her having to climb over the lip of the
yep.
tub to get in and out is just, that can be a trip hazard. So we definitely, had all of those safeguards in mind when he was doing the framing so that we could come back later and install more handrails if we needed to. We have some in the restroom now, but if we needed to, we could install more. So I think that was really important in the initial design.
And having somebody working with you who gets it, who you're not trying to every step of the way be like, oh, no, no, this is not, this is not that, or reminding him of the importance of what's happening. Some people just get it. And it's true for contractors, but also your realtor and your banker and your therapist, they have to get it. And I think, and I talk a lot, this is a separate subject for another time, but ageism is real. And what I have found talking to different people is, especially when it comes to aging parents, that sometimes they're treated a little bit differently because of their age, and that is a crappy thing to me. That people would approach boomers and that generation in a way that they are in any way less than because of their age. So to have someone who gets it and is here to support and here to help from the beginning, what a gift in itself.
Well, I think that was divinely guided, I must say.
Yeah.
We were very fortunate. We received the initial dementia diagnosis really in January of last year. And so we've been navigating that process ever since, which involves a lot of testing and a lot of specialists. And we're not quite there yet with a firm diagnosis of what's next, right? But we are navigating that. And so I think back to your point with ageism, it's really important to be an advocate, especially in our healthcare system. And I'm just so grateful that I get to be her advocate because if she was left to her own devices, I think she would really struggle with even making it to her appointments because I don't want to get into my chart, but just the electronic systems that are in place are difficult for us to navigate, especially difficult for people to navigate that maybe don't have the skill set that they need with technology, right?
Sure.
So I had to jump in. She was missing a lot of appointments. And so I had to jump in and start advocating for her, taking her to the appointments and keeping track of the appointments too. So that's when we knew that we were on a very tight time schedule. Some of the feedback that we received was that we may have 2 years, right, with
Okay.
cognitive ability. And so, due to those reasons, I knew we needed to act quickly. And that's why when we looked at what homes were available on the market at that time, we just didn't find the perfect thing available for us, which limited our options to doing a renovation. And once we made the decision, like you have to make the decision, we could have looked for another 2 years. We didn't have another 2 years to look. We had to make a decision quickly. And what made the most sense is, again, I'm thinking divine intervention because our contractor had an opening in his calendar, which was,
Ah,
you know how that goes.
yep.
All I have to say is, we had to wait on his calendar too for a few months, but we finally were able to get the ball rolling. And when we got the ball rolling, it just happened so quickly. I mean, from the beginning of clearing out the space and making room for the project to even begin to her moving in was probably less than 4 months.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Well, and that's good for people who are considering this, that things, sometimes you hear about nightmare construction stories that it takes years to get in, but it doesn't have to. This is a good,
Doesn't have to.
you can get going and get things rolling, and that's incredible that within 4 months she was in her new space. That's
I
awesome.
think it's helpful that we have a background in real estate investing. So we have contractors and stuff like resources readily available. So we did have a little bit more insight going into the project. But I will say that even construction materials, you have to be mindful about the resources that you're using, non-skid flooring, things like that, not a lot of area rugs. I mean, just learning so much cool stuff. And even how we're storing her clothing. We've got a like a huge container that we put or shelf, like a huge shelving
Yep.
unit, and we put laundry baskets in it. And so it's just easier to put the clothes in the laundry basket, pull that out, push that back, and organize it that way. That's just one little tip. But just anything that we can do to make it easy. We put signage on the bathroom door, signage on the door that goes to the steps upstairs, like, just making it really simple and easy to navigate.
That's such helpful feedback. And I think it's really important to think what a piece of advice I would give to everyone is, not all of us have a real estate person and a lender in our mix, but a lot of us know someone who does. And a lot of us, so you don't have to feel like, oh, well, I don't know how I'll ever find a contractor. Start asking. People can't, I tell people that in my business, people don't, you can't help them if they don't know what you do. Same thing, if you don't put it out there, hey, I'm looking for a good contractor. Do you know of any? Ask your realtor friends, ask your lender friends, ask if someone has a lender friend, because think of what you need in your arsenal and ask for it. I think is such a powerful thing. Let's talk for a second about, you were talking about being an advocate, and I know you've navigated kind of a slew of big life events in the last little bit. You have had a husband who had a medical emergency. You had a pet situation that was very difficult. You've got your mom moving in, a construction, which we all know, no matter how smooth it goes, you're still living in a construction zone. Talk to me about how you got everything kept together during those moments. And
Oh my goodness. Well, I think it probably didn't look like that at some moments during that time frame. I will say that. My husband really took lead on the construction project, and that's his wheelhouse. That just was really helpful. He took lead on that. I took lead on organizing and getting her stuff kind of dwindled down to make the move. And so that was helpful. I think dividing and conquering was helpful. But one thing I do want to mention is that when we moved my mom in, I kind of had her go with her friends while we did the heavy lifting behind her, right? And so when she came back, she was moved in, all of her stuff was put away. If I had one thing to do differently, I would allow her to be a part of that process a little bit more because she moved in. And even though I put everything back exactly how it was at her house, it wasn't her space yet, right? So
Right.
she had a hard time navigating where everything was. And even though I said, your clothes are in your closet, well, where's the closet? I don't know where the closet is. So
Gotcha.
that's where the signage came in. The signage was really helpful, saying, this is the bathroom, this is, just so she could know where all the doors went to. I think that was a little confusing. And then the fact that she was on the ground level and we're upstairs. I mean, she still comes upstairs and eats dinner with us and all that stuff. But, that took a minute for her to recognize what's the easiest way for me to get upstairs because she was always used to going upstairs from the outside. And now we have interior stairs. So just little things like that you don't think about, just helping her navigate that. So now, since recognizing that in our approach, I have made it a point to talk to her like a human being. Like, this is your life, this is your decision. Let me assist you in making the decisions that you want to make. Let me assist you in, if you want to move your clothes somewhere else, if you want to move your dishes, rearrange your stuff, I'll help you do that. And so, we did it the way we did it because of a matter of time, right? We had to get her out of her apartment in a certain time frame. So we were pressed for time. But I think if I could have done it differently, I would have allowed her to be a part of that process. But I did let her be a part of the process with picking out all the materials. Like, she picked out pretty much everything, or I narrowed it down to like three choices
Yep.
and presented her with the options. And then she got to pick the final finishes and the final colors. And I think that was really special for her. So she could feel like she made it a little bit her own space too.
For sure. What would you say might have been the biggest adjustment for her from a moving in perspective? Did she have any resistance? Has there been any like autonomy, independence, pushback? Or how is she handling the adjustment?
Really, I wanted to create a safe place for her to grieve because she, lost a pet and she had this new diagnosis and she doesn't know what the rest of her life is going to look like. So I just wanted to create a kind space that was safe, let her know that she is safe because, there's chemical things happening inside of her body that we don't have any control over. And so I'm also like in a bunch of support groups online. So that's where some of this information came from. But recognizing that she is a human being and she has still full autonomy over herself, right? And so a lot of that looks like me reassuring her that, we have created this place for you to feel safe and to feel comfortable and to know that we're going to be here for you and with you every step of the way. I think that's been really helpful. She's still really emotional about all of this, as anyone would be, right? We took her keys away last March. We didn't take her keys away. She gave them gladly, honestly. She did. She ran out of gas on Wapu Road and it freaked her out. So after that, she said she didn't feel comfortable driving anymore. And I respect that, right? And so I did ask her one day, my husband, when he was in the hospital, I was like, if I needed you to drive the car, could you drive it home? And she said, yes, she would do that. She just doesn't feel comfortable, you know, driving long distances and things like that. And I'm totally fine with that. And so now having her here it just makes it that much easier.
Yeah.
So I'll take her along with me and we'll go grab coffee or lunch, in between my sales calls and things like that. And it's just been so much fun. And
And
I think I mentioned our daily walks too. I
yeah,
love
that
our
I was
daily
just going to say, you and I've talked about, you mentioned that this has been, even with its challenges and learning curve, that this has been extremely healing experience and a beautiful one. Talk to me about the the moments that have come up that make it all worth it, and you're like, oh man, this is it. This is what I wanted.
So I'm an only child, and I know you are too, and that's really important. I think that we're just really close to our parents. Like my
Very.
mom is my best friend. I mean, she is the person that I call
Same.
if I have anything going on in my life. Like, how do I navigate this? And this is the one thing that I couldn't call and ask her advice on.
Yeah.
How do I navigate caring for you? Right. And so actually, I did ask her. Now that I think about it, now that I'm kind of approaching things in a different way, we all love to be control freaks, and I want to be in control of my house, right? I want to keep my house in order. And a lot of women are like that. This is our space. We want to keep our space the way that we want it. And, I had to recognize, or I had to learn really quickly that that's not the most important thing. If there's crumbs on the floor, it's okay. You know, if there's coffee spilled on the floor, or coffee spilled on the countertop, it's okay. And it took me a second, right? When she first moved in, I was like tidying around and, keeping everything clean. And then I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. Like this, it makes her uncomfortable. It makes me crazy. Like, it's okay, right?
Yep.
So we hired a housekeeper, and I think we're all in agreement that was a good decision. So little things like that, how can we get extra support? But the most important thing I feel like is our routine that we're starting together. And that looks like, grabbing coffee on a Sunday morning. That looks like going for a walk every afternoon. Um, that may look like us grabbing lunch together. Or, yesterday I was working out in the garden and she was out there with me, keeping me company. And then she said, would you like some tuna salad? I'm going to go in and make some lunch.
Oh,
That was just so awesome. Now, I will say she never made the tuna salad, but that was okay. She did bring me a coffee instead. Whatever. I mean, it was just so nice to be able to spend that time in the sunshine with her and
yeah.
get her input. She loves gardening, and so I'm helping prepare some space so she can have her own garden right outside her door. And then, my husband's doing a big garden in the front yard, so we're just going to have stuff everywhere. I think that it will be more of a communal experience now that we have all three of us contributing to the garden. So we're
Oh,
really looking forward to that.
that's the part I'm so excited for, that part when we get home from Europe and actually into the same space, because the way we set up our homes is that we have two separate homes. But the communal outside space, there's really no divide. And we're all very much outside people. We love the water. We're right on the water. And it's that part of piddling in the yard, or, grilling out on the deck and having that interaction, that communal time. Like you said, as an only, I'm so close with my parents. They are our best friends. Like my dad and my husband are joined at the hip when they're together. And it's not that we don't all butt heads. There have been some amazing blow ups as well. But it's, that's what happens with family. But it's a really special time that I'm excited for, for the walks, for the grill outs, for the playing in the dirt. I can't wait. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, because I think it's important that folks remember, when shit hits the fan, which it will, that's not what you're there for. That's not why you made this decision. Remember why you made this decision to do this type of living. And I think it's going to make it all the more powerful. Oh, I'm excited.
I have to say that you hit it right on the head, right? Like our biggest component to this decision was engagement. Daily engagement with her is the best solution. Like it's the cure, right? showing them that they're loved,
Yep.
engaging with them on a regular basis, and we would make dinner and we would drop dinner off to her. But that's not the same as
Yep.
saying, okay, dinner's ready, come upstairs, let's have dinner together. Or, hey, let's make some brownies, I mean,
Yeah.
taking up like baking all of a sudden. I mean, I'm not a baker, but I will make some killer box brownies. And that's just something fun that we like to do together. She's got a great recipe for cookies. And it's so funny because I never knew that her secret recipe for her famous cookies actually came off of the Toll House chocolate chip bag.
It's like a real life there's a Friends episode like that. And I think Phoebe's like grandmother's secret recipe. And she calls it, she's like, no, it was Nestle Tollhauser. Something like,
Oh,
and they're like, what? I think that's a common thing. It's too fun. That's why they're so successful because they make amazing cookies. So good that your mom
I'm like,
zeroed in on
what's
it.
the 2, 2, and 2 recipe, Derek? It's 2, 2, and 2. And he's like, what is this 2, 2, and 2? And I'm like, it's it's always 2, 2, and 2. For whatever reason, it seems like every recipe it's something very simple to remember. And it's usually something like 2, 2, and 2. Just remember, it's the twos.
Oh my gosh. So funny. I love it. Okay,
I
as
might have
we
to do a
bring
book with all of her funny recipes. That would be so funny.
that would be great,
That
actually.
would be cool.
As we bring this full circle, let's talk about any, obviously you and I share that, the big piece of advice is just do it. Do
Right.
this type of living. But what would be a piece of advice that you might would give to families that are weighing their options, maybe an important question that they should ask themselves before committing to multi-gen living?
Well, I want to back up for just a second. My mom lived in Hawaii for almost 30 years, right? And in other cultures, as I'm sure you have also witnessed being abroad, it's very common to live multi-gen
Everywhere. Yes.
everywhere in the world except for America, right? And so we already had that kind of in the back of our minds. We had always looked for a home with an ohana. That's what they call it in
Yep.
Hawaii. And most homes in Hawaii come with an ohana, right? Like where my mom and stepdad lived, they had an ohana. I'd come visit. I mean, that's just the common theme, right, in their culture and in living. And so I knew that I wanted a home with an ohana here, right? And so we'd lived in this home for 10 years, didn't really have a need to build one until now. That really was the thing that pushed us forward into doing it. But what I would say is, even though our children are grown and away at college and doing their thing, from a perspective of just having an elderly person in the home when you have young children, having that additional engagement on both sides is so important. Like I look back now and I'm like, why didn't we do this sooner? Why didn't we have that already built out? Why didn't, I mean, that's probably the biggest question is why didn't we do it sooner? But if you are someone that is interested in that journey, then yes, I would say jump in, start doing it from a finance perspective, right? With interest rates where they are today, and the threshold of getting into that entry level home is so much greater. It makes sense to do multi-generation living now. And
Yeah.
we're seeing so many more people do that. I had a family earlier this year that, might have been unattainable for them to purchase at the country club, right? But when they were able to pull their resources together, we were able to get both families into a home that was able to accommodate them. And just like with us, the parents lived downstairs and the kids lived upstairs and then the grandkids lived, upstairs from there.
Yeah.
Most of our houses in Charleston are built that way. So that's just kind of how it goes. But I would say just, know your numbers, see what you can afford. And if you're really struggling, this is for new families. If you're really struggling to get into that entry level home, maybe this is a solution. I think it brings families closer together. It allows you to maybe heal or overcome some of those challenges that you faced. And it really just opens up so much more space for love and compassion and memories to be made. So just do it.
I couldn't agree more on all fronts. And I think you nailed it on the head when you said that other countries, cultures have been doing this for eons because
Right,
it makes sense in so many different ways. And it's just that the US is finally catching up a little bit, whether it's from, we're seeing things easier on social media. We're all traveling more than ever before. We have immigrants in our communities where we're able to see this happening in live time and
right.
watching America wake up to this and it become more and more and more common. I think is going to be a beautiful shift happening in the way that we're raising families and the way that we're doing life in general, which is really exciting to be part of early on. So I can't thank you enough for coming and talking to me today and sharing your honesty and your heart. Um, your story is an incredible one, and I wish you guys and your mom all the best. And I want
I'm
to keep
so
up.
excited. I'm so excited for you guys, one, to move back to Charleston. And
Yay.
two, I'm really excited for this new journey for you and your family because I think it's going to be just a beautiful experience that your children are going to just cherish forever. And I know you as an only child, me as an only child, we will cherish these memories forever. And if there's anything that this past year has taught me with all that we've navigated with health stuff and all of that is that time is limited, right? And the people that we love most need to be receiving the best of us. And the most of our attention. And how else can we give of ourselves in that way unless we can like bring them into the fold and let them be a part of?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.